friends, and welcome back to our channel, or welcome if you're new here. In this video, we're going to give you the top 10 reasons not to move to Utah in 2024. So stay tuned because we're going to give you all the cons of living in Utah if you're looking to make the move here to the Beehive State.
So we're going to dive deep into some of the worst things about living in Utah and see if there are things that would make you think twice about moving here. Here are your top 10 reasons not to move to Utah in 2024.
If this is your first time to this channel and you want to know everything about living, eating, sleeping, working, and playing in northern Utah, then subscribe below and tap the bell for notifications so you can be the first to know about the current market here in northern Utah.
We are Sloan and Kim Peterson with the Peterson Group, and we've been in real estate for 10 years, and every day we help people just like you looking to buy, sell, invest, and relocate right here to northern Utah. Whether you're moving in 9 days or 90 days, give us a call, shoot us a text, or send us an email. All of our information in that description box below so we can help you make a smooth transition here to northern Utah.
Now, first off, I want to say, and we always give this disclaimer, but pros and cons, they're relative to every person. So while some people may never live in a state that has some of the things we're going to discuss in this video, other people really don't care, while still others might think the pros far outweigh the cons, and that's why they choose to stay living here in Utah. Now, one of the top reasons you either hate or love to live here is the harsh winters. Utah is known for its snow, and we get a lot of it. Our winters here are cold, they're dry, and they can sometimes feel like they last for half of the year. So if you really don't like the cold weather, being out in it, driving in it, living in it, then you may really not want to consider moving to Utah. Now, just a caveat, there is one area of Utah that does not get snow, and that is down in St. George. So if you love the beauty and outdoor nature of Utah, but not the cold, then we still actually have a place for you. But really, a lot of the reason why many people move out of Utah is actually because they want to be in a warmer climate. Now, having lived here for a large portion of my life, I can say that 4 or 5 months in, I'm also ready for a warmer climate. But I honestly could not imagine the holiday season or Christmas without at least some snow on the ground.
Yeah, definitely. And one thing to keep in mind is we've gotten snow as late as June before, and it's not uncommon to get snow in May.
Yep.
And so we actually had our last snowfall just recently, early May, and it was not just a little dusting. It was a pretty good snowstorm. So you can get it, which if you're a gardener or something like that, you want to wait until at least after Mother's Day to start planting your crops for sure.
That's a good point.
All right, so the next one is going to be the limited nightlife in Utah, and some of that does have to do with Utah's stricter alcohol regulations. Like we talked about in some of our previous videos, a lot of places like restaurants and bars do close a little bit earlier than you might expect in a larger city. So if you're single and looking to mingle, or you just love to go out on a Tuesday with your friends, Utah might not be the most happening spot out there. Now, the city is always growing and changing, but one thing that's been the same or even gotten stricter over the years is Utah's alcohol laws. Currently, the legal limit in the Beehive State is 0.5%, and the beer here is actually only 5% alcohol by volume, which is much lower than most of the states around us. We have distinctions here between restaurants and bars, which do limit what you can order and how much. And the liquor stores are all state-owned, and beyond beer, there's really no availability of alcohol or wine in grocery stores or gas stations. For some people, this has always been this how it is, while others might consider this to be a deal breaker and quite annoying.
Yeah, and so it's actually funny, we met from a couple that are looking to move here from New Jersey just a couple days ago, and we kind of talked about Utah's limited nightlife, because if you're like Sloan and I, we just eat late just because that's how our business works or whatever. And so since they were here visiting, the time got away from them and it was like 8:30 p.m. and they were like, oh, we had to like rush out to find some place to eat. So just, keeping stuff like that in mind if you are a late eater. Plan just for eating at home or just doing takeout. Restaurants are really good about that here. Okay, next up is Utah's conservative culture. Now, Utah definitely swings right when it comes to politics, and for some people, that doesn't work for their lifestyle. Now, personally, we don't really care about anybody's politics, and it's not something we talk about. But if you do have a passion for politics or want to live in a like-minded state, then it's something worth knowing. Part of the conservative culture obviously boils down to the predominant religion of the state, which does have some influence on what laws pass in the state. This would also make sense with our stricter alcohol laws as well as the pro-gun stance of the state. If you're considering moving to Utah and you do have strong political stances either way, this may affect your decision.
And just speaking a little bit more to Utah's gun laws, is Utah did recently change to a constitutional carry state, which means you don't even have to have a concealed permit to conceal carry. So just something, if you are pro-gun, that's something you might like about Utah, or you might not like that if you don't like guns, but here or there, it is something that is a fact here in Utah. And next, let's talk about Utah's air quality. It really is bad, and I mean, even those of us that live here know how terrible Utah's air quality can get, especially in the wintertime. We've actually done a whole video about the state of Utah's air quality, so if that's something you do want to know about further, definitely check out the video. But obviously the biggest factor for anyone that's considering moving here to Utah would be possible health repercussions. If you do have any sort of sinus issues, bronchitis issues, or any other sort of issues that are affected by air quality, then you might want to consider what it would take for you to live in Utah if that's where you want to reside. For example, Kim does have sinus infections and I do struggle with bronchitis. So what Kim does in the wintertime is she makes sure that she just uses a humidifier or a neti pot. You might also want to consider getting a whole home air purifier installed, but it definitely does not mean it's a total no for you to live in Utah. But for sure, a big consideration you might want to make if you do have some of those health concerns.
Yeah, definitely. Anywhere you want to consider living, you want to make sure things like the air quality won't affect that. And I think that's something people really don't think about. But for Utah especially, it's definitely a consideration.
Definitely. And just one thing to note, I already said that before, but you just want to make sure that it is only in the winter months. So about 4 months of the year, we have actually ranked some of the worst air quality in the whole world. So it's because we're in a bowl. And like I said, we do talk about that in another video that's just about the air pollution and inversions that we experience here.
Okay, so the next one we're going to talk about, and we've touched on this a little bit earlier, but Utah does have a big religious influence. Again, this isn't a pro or con. It's up to each person to decide how they feel about it. But you will definitely see the influence in how the state is run and in state laws. That's just typical. So obviously our predominant religion here in Utah is Mormonism or Latter-day Saints. They are a Christian-based religion, and the religion does have a big influence on the state being more conservative. Now, some people love living in a state with a big religious influence for reasons like safety and family values, while others might feel stifled and not free to live in the way that they want. Again, it's something each person has to decide for themselves, but it's definitely a big thing to mention when considering calling Utah home.
So one thing that we do hear people ask us a lot about relocating is the diversity here in Utah. And speaking strictly off statistics, Utah is limited in its diversity. According to datausa.com, we have 77.3% of Utahns are white, and around 60% identify as the predominant religion. 54% of registered voters in Utah identify as Republican, with only 13% leaning towards Democratic values. So Utah is not the most diverse state, as you can see, when it comes to things like race, religion, and politics. So depending on how important that is to you, then you might want to look into or consider the data when considering a move here to Utah.
Okay, the next one, and this one is only temporary for most people, is high altitude. When we talk to almost anyone from out of state, whether they are visiting or they just moved here, they say it takes them a while to acclimate and to be able to do things like work out, adjust to baking, things like that. Now, some people do suffer from severe altitude sickness, so if you are planning a move here to Utah, it's definitely worth taking a visit to see how you do. It typically takes 24 to 36 hours to adjust, so just keep that in mind and maybe plan for a week or so to be able to see how you do. Again, just something to consider, because it would be terrible to spend a bunch of money and make a big cross-state move and learn that you're one of those people who actually do suffer from severe altitude sickness.
All right, so next up is going to be our limited public transportation. So now, since this is such a big issue, we did do a whole video where we just talked about Utah's public transportation. So that's something that you really want to check out, or that will affect you. To learn more about that, and you're definitely going to want to check out that video. Now, we have a few modes of public transportation here in Utah, such as our Frontrunner. This is our rail commuter train, and some of the main problems with this is that it only runs from Provo to Ogden. So if you're outside of those areas, it probably won't work for you, and it only runs from 5 a.m. to midnight. But it also depends totally upon the direction you're going. So for example, it might end in Ogden at midnight, and then in Provo the last train could be 10 p.m. A lot of the time it doesn't stop at certain stations either at certain times, and there's usually a whole hour between trains in each station. So if you miss it, then you're gonna be waiting quite a while to catch the next one. We also, of course, have buses, the track system, and taxis and Ubers, but each of those are gonna have their own issues and cons as well here in Utah. So if public transportation is going to be your main mode of travel when you do live here, then you might wanna do some research and just see how feasible it's going to be in the area that you decide to live in.
Okay, and coming in next is the dry climate and droughts. So Utah is actually the third driest state, only after Nevada and Arizona. We are still considered a desert climate here, even though we have so much greenery and a lot of snow. While this can cause a lot of health and body issues, it also causes massive environmental issues, like droughts and Utah's susceptibility to fires. A couple of years ago, we had a severe drought in which the state had to regulate the amount of water people were using to take a shower or wash their dishes, and how much and how often they could water their lawns. A lot of our lakes and bays had to cease water activities because the levels were so unsafe for people, and even the Great Salt Lake was evaporating and causing major environmental issues. So if you do have any health-related issues that may be heightened due to a dry climate, you will really want to do your research to make sure Utah is a good fit for you to live in. And like we talked about earlier, I do suffer from super dry sinuses, sinus infections, and I found just doing the neti pot consistently has really helped me in that area.
And so last but not least is going to, of course, be Utah's cost of living. Now again, this one, more than any of the others, is probably going to be relative to your own personal situation. For someone that is moving from, say, Hawaii or LA, they might view our cost of living, especially our housing, as really affordable. However, if you're moving from a small town in the Midwest, then maybe Utah is going to be highly unaffordable for you. So again, this one's gonna be relative to where you're at and where you're moving from. But like many other states, Utah really did see a boom in housing during the 2020 and 2021 era. And in fact, in those years, we had a 28% and a 22% equity gain in housing, and that's absolutely crazy. In fact, it's so unheard of that we like to call it the unicorn years. Of course, for everyone that didn't already own a home here, it did make our housing market skyrocket. Couple that with Utah's less than average income and the inflation that's affecting everybody around the nation, Utah can be unaffordable for some buyers. However, if you are interested in moving to Utah, we have a lot of options that may make it a little more affordable for you than others. And so if this is what's keeping you from making a move here, then be sure to reach out to us and we'd be happy to help you explore some options so that you can make an informed decision when thinking about moving here to Northern Utah.
Okay guys, that wraps up our top 10 reasons not to move to Utah in 2024. So if those didn't scare you, then maybe Utah's a great place for you. We hope you enjoyed this video and found it helpful. Picking where you'll call home is an important decision, and we would love to help you make that smooth transition to the Northern Utah area. If you're looking to purchase out here in the Northern Utah area, we would love to help you out. Give us a call, shoot us a text, or send us an email. And until next time, we're keeping it real. Estate.